Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Arjuna Uvacha Jayasi Chit Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Gorde Mam Niyojas Yasi Keshavaha. Arjuna Uvacha. Arjun said, Jayasi, better, Chit, if, Karmanaha, then fruitive actions, Te, by you, Mata, is considered, Buddhihi, intelligence, Janardana, O Krishna, Tat, therefore. That's on page number 147. Kim, why? Karmani, in action. Gorde, ghastly. Mam, me. Niyojayasi, you are engaging. Keshava, O Krishna. Arjun said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, has very elaborately described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter, with a view to delivering his intimate friend Arjun from the ocean of material grief. And the path of realization has been recommended. Buddhi Yoga, or Krishna consciousness. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia, and one with such a misunderstanding often withdraws to a secluded place to become fully Krishna conscious by chanting the holy name of Krishna. But without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it's not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place, where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. Arjun also thought of Krishna consciousness, or Buddhi Yoga, or intelligence in spiritual advancement of knowledge, as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to his best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained Karma Yoga, our work in Krishna consciousness. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, in this verse, Arjuna is asking a question. He wants some clarification. He feels that if working in Krishna consciousness or Buddhi Yoga is better than karmic activities, work with fruitive works, work with some expectation of enjoying the fruit. So why are you engaging me in this ghastly warfare? So there's a misunderstanding, right? Because Arjuna is thinking that Buddha Yoga, our working in Krishna consciousness, is something like retirement from active life, right? You go to a secluded place and there you work on Krishna consciousness. So sometimes we see in Vrindavan some persons, they have come to Vrindavan and they're chanting, right? They're trying to execute Krishna consciousness. And many people feel like that. You know, you when you go to spiritual life, means you have to leave everything and practice in a holy place like Vrindavan. But we see many persons who have gone to Vrindavan, but they're actually not able to even give up a simple bad habit. They're so-called doing sadhana, but we see at the end of the sadhana, they're smoking cigarettes, tobacco, right? So this is this kind of activity will not help one advance spiritually, right? So-called renunciation. There's no value in that kind of renunciation. It's called markata sannyas. That means monkey sannyas. Monkeys, they don't wear any clothes and they live in trees, right? But the monkey is keeping so many wives. Right? So that kind of sannyas is not helpful. Right? Rather, we see from this example that Arjuna is a military man and Krishna is telling him that he should engage in his occupational activity. Right? In other words, he should engage in the warfare. He should engage in the battle. In the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains thoroughly about the nature of the soul. The soul is eternal. The body dies, but the soul never dies. The body can be killed, but the soul can never be killed. Right? And the soul cannot be moistened by water, nor withered by the wind, nor burnt by fire. In other words, the soul is spiritual. Right? So because Krishna has explained about the nature of the soul to Arjuna, Arjuna is taking it that spiritual life means to understand this nature of the soul. And that is certainly true. One has to have an understanding of one's original identity as an eternal spirit soul to make progress in spiritual life. But the way of making progress is not to do nothing, or inertia. Just sitting around or hanging around in a holy place is not going to help us. But rather one has to perform activities because that's our nature. But those activities that we perform should be in relationship to the Supreme Lord. So Arjuna has this doubt, and that is the way of making spiritual progress, right? Srila Prabhupada describes in the Srimad Bhagavatam that having a doubt is the sign of intelligence, right? And that one should seek out to have one's doubts cleared. just as Arjuna is doing in this verse. He's asking a question. You know, and spiritual life depends upon asking questions, right? To find out. If you are trying to go somewhere and you don't know how to get there, what do you have to do? You have to make inquiry, right? When you go to the railway station, there's the inquiry booth. So if you don't know something, you can go to the inquiry booth and find out. Is it not? In the same way, when we're interested in spiritual life, if we don't know, we have to ask. Inquiry. And this Krishna recommends in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Said you should approach someone who is Tattva Darshana. Tattva means truth, and Darshana means seen. A seer of the truth, someone who knows the truth. And what should you do? Well, you should do two things. You should render service to, and you should ask submissive questions, right? This is how one makes progress in spiritual life. And this is what Arjuna is doing here. He's accepted Krishna as his master, and he has a doubt, right? He's thinking that Krishna is encouraging him to take part in the battle, but he has this misconception about what spiritual life is. It should be free from these type of activities, and one should just be kind of contemplating something, like that I'm a spirit soul. So then in the next verse, Arjuna continues, my intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively what is best for me. Please tell me decisively what is best for me. Purport. In the previous chapter, as a prelude to the Bhagavad Gita, many different paths were explained, such as Sankhya Yoga, Buddhi Yoga, control of the senses by intelligence, work without fruitive desire, and the position of the neophyte. This was all presented unsystematically. A more organized outline of the path would be necessary for action and understanding. Arjuna, therefore, wanted to clear up these apparently confusing matters so that any common man could accept them without misinterpretation. Although Krishna had no intention of confusing Arjuna by any jugglery of words, Arjuna could not follow the process of Krishna consciousness, either by inertia or by active service. In other words, by his question, he is clearing the path of Krishna consciousness for all students who seriously want to understand the mystery of Bhagavad Gita. So first of all, if one wants to progress in the spiritual life, there has to be some surrender. Just like Arjuna is surrendered unto Krishna. He's accepted Krishna as his guide in spiritual understanding. So first is surrender. Second, one has to render service. Surrender, service, inquiry. If there's no surrender, if there's no service, only inquiry won't help. You'll go on inquiring and inquiring and inquiring with no conclusion. Right? So just as Arjuna has surrendered to Krishna and he's ready to to do whatever Krishna tells him, but he has this question. He wants it to be cleared up. So in that way, Arjuna's doubt will be cleared, right? So that's an important part of Krishna consciousness, that surrender has to be there, service has to be there, and then inquiry will become fruitful. Also, Arjuna is interacting with Krishna on our behalf. Actually, Arjuna is a self-realized soul, but he's playing the role of a conditioned soul. He's playing our role as conditioned soul, so that he can hear Bhagavad Gita for our benefit. So he's reiterating this question for all the persons in the future who read Bhagavad Gita, so everything will become very clear to them. Krishna consciousness is not ambiguous. It's a very clear thing, right? Many times, persons who speak of spiritual life, they have many complicated or verbose explanations, very wordy explanations about what spiritual life is. But we can see that Srila Prabhupada's explanations of Bhagavad Gita are very concise and very clear. It's not ambiguous. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Manmana bhava mad bhakto. And Srila Prabhupada says that one should think of Krishna and offer obeisances to Krishna and become Krishna's devotee. No misinterpretation. Right? Very clear. So Arjuna here in this verse, just making things very clear for everyone, is asking Lord Krishna. Let us go to verse number 3. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Lokesmin vidhanishta pura prokta maya naga jnana yogena sankyanam karma yogena yoginam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service. Purport. In the second chapter, verse 39, the Lord explained two kinds of procedures, namely Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga, or Buddha Yoga. In this verse, the Lord explains the same more clearly. Sankhya Yoga, or the analytical study of the nature of spirit and matter, is a subject matter for persons who are inclined to speculate and understand things by experimental knowledge and philosophy. The other class of men work in Krishna consciousness. As it explained in the 61st chapter, 61st verse of the second chapter. The Lord has explained also in the 39th verse that by working by the principles of Buddha Yoga or Krishna consciousness, one can be relieved from the bonds of action, and furthermore, there's no flaw in the process. The same principle is more clearly explained in the 61st verse, that this Buddha Yoga is to depend entirely on the Supreme, or more specifically, on Krishna. And in this way, all the senses can be brought under control very easily. Therefore, both the yogas are independent, as religion and philosophy. Religion without philosophy is sentiment, or sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. The ultimate goal is Krishna, because the philosophers who are also sincerely searching after the absolute truth come to the end in Krishna consciousness. This is also stated in Bhagavad Gita. The whole process is to understand the real position of the self in relationship to the superself. The indirect process in philosophical speculation, by which gradually one may come to the point of Krishna consciousness. And the other process is directly connecting everything with Krishna and Krishna consciousness. Of these two, the path of Krishna consciousness is better because it does not depend on purifying the senses by a philosophical process. Krishna consciousness is itself the purifying process, and by the direct method of devotional service, it is simultaneously easy and sublime. So in this particular verse, Lord Krishna is explaining two types of approach. There's the philosophical approach, to try to understand God by the analytical study of this world, and that was referred to in the second chapter as a Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga very detailedly analyzes all the different material elements and to gradually understand what is the source of all the material elements. Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Sa Mahatma Sadurlabha. So, the other is one who performs Buddhi Yoga or acts in Krishna consciousness. That means he performs activities directly in relationship to the service of Krishna, devotional service. Prahlad Maharaj describes 9 processes of devotional service: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. Right? To hear about Krishna, to chant about Krishna, remember Krishna, to serve the lotus feet, to be the servant of Krishna, to surrender everything to Krishna. So, one who engages in the direct process of Krishna consciousness by engaging the senses in the service of Krishna, this is the more direct way of coming to the same goal. Those persons who are looking for the absolute truth by philosophical speculation, ultimately they're also looking for this relationship with Krishna. And if they're sincere, they'll come to that position. But rather, engaging in Krishna consciousness directly is more, is like the quicker process. Now, one may have understanding of philosophy, and there's two things: having a philosophical conclusion, and then following some kind of religious process. And both things are required. Srila Prabhupada quotes his spiritual master as saying that if you have simply philosophy with no religion, that's mental speculation. And religion with no philosophy is simply fanaticism or sentimentality. So both things have to be there. A clear philosophical understanding, and also at the same time a religious practice. And persons who are simply interested in the religious practice without understanding why they're doing the religious practice, that is also not beneficial. There's a funny story about how religious practices sometimes come about. There was a Brahmin priest, and he was performing a marriage ceremony. While he was performing the marriage ceremony, He was chanting Vedic mantras, right? But there was a cat that was making noise, was howling. Row, row. So what the Brahmin did was, he took the cat and put it under a basket so it wouldn't disturb. Right? And then he went on with the marriage ceremony. Right? So now there was another priest. He was learning this marriage ceremony. So after that, he went off to perform another marriage ceremony. So he was preparing the different ingredients. So he said that he needed one cat so that he could put him under the basket. Right? So this is following religious activities without knowing why you're following some religious practice. Well, I don't know, my father did, my mother did, my grandfather did, but why are you doing it? Well, I really don't know why I do it, Right? So that won't be beneficial in spiritual life. No good result will come that way. If we do things for the sake of understanding God, we should know why we're doing things. Right? So both things have to be there. Right? A practical way of interacting with the Supreme Lord. Right? And also a clear understanding of the philosophy of God and the relationship with God. Both things should be there. This chapter is called Karma Yoga, so it's going to more clearly explain what actually Karma Yoga is. And many times people think that Karma Yoga means you just do your duty. If you're a businessman, you work at your business, right? And that's Karma Yoga, right? So this is some of the misunderstandings that are there about Karma Yoga, right? Actually, Srila Prabhupada will go on to explain that there's no difference between Karma Yoga and Krishna consciousness. Real Karma Yoga means to act in Krishna consciousness. But that'll be explained more in the chapter as we go along. But I'll stop here if there's any questions that anybody has. Yes?
What is the first thing or way which can help us to surrender Krishna?
Well, one thing you can do is when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you think about is you think of Krishna. And you say, "My dear Lord Krishna, from this day forward, I'm yours." Right? So that will help us in surrendering to Krishna. Right? From this day forward, I'm yours. When we first wake up, we think about so many things. But we should think about Krishna. That will help us.